The world reacts, but you don't have to. Have you ever noticed how some people move through life like they're immune to chaos? A bad day at work. They don't flinch. Someone disrespects them. They stay unbothered. Life throws curveballs, and they just keep walking. Meanwhile, the rest of us? We're spiraling over a late text. Fuming because someone cut us off in traffic. Wrecked over a comment someone made online. Suddenly, our mood shifts, our energy drops, and it feels like we've lost control. But here's a hard truth we often miss: it's not the world that's triggering us, it's the meaning we give to what happens. You see, freedom doesn't start when everything around you is calm. It starts when you learn to calm what's within, no matter what's going on outside. This is where the ancient Stoics got it right centuries ago. They realized that real power isn't in controlling the world, it's in controlling your reaction to it. You can't always choose your circumstances, but you can absolutely choose how you interpret them. That's where your strength lives. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where someone looked at you a certain way and your brain immediately jumped to, "Did I do something wrong?" Or maybe a friend took too long to respond, and you assumed they were upset. But what if they were just distracted? Or tired? What if that judgmental look wasn't even about you? We spend so much of our lives reacting to shadows, assumptions, projections, old wounds. And we never stop to ask, is this real, or is it just a story I'm telling myself? The world is always going to test you. But how you respond, that's entirely your choice. And that's the good news. Because when you learn how to stop reacting and start observing, you step into a new kind of freedom. One where your peace no longer depends on anyone else. So today, we're diving deep into that shift. How to break the habit of reacting. How to reclaim your emotional control. And most importantly, how to become untouchable. Let's begin. Part 1. Are you reacting to reality, or to the story you made up? Let me ask you something personal. When was the last time you got upset, not because of what actually happened, but because of what you thought it meant? You see, most of us walk through life assuming we're reacting to reality. But more often than not, we're reacting to our interpretation of it. And that's a dangerous game. There's a powerful Stoic quote that cuts straight to the heart of this. It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about those things. In other words, the world doesn't make you feel anxious, offended, or disrespected. You do. Not intentionally, of course, but through the stories your mind tells itself. Let's break it down with an example. You're at the gym. Someone glances your way and frowns. Immediately, your brain starts racing. Are they judging me? Do I look stupid? Am I doing something wrong? But slow down. What if they weren't even looking at you? What if they just remembered something stressful from work, or maybe they had a stomach cramp? You don't know. But your mind fills in the blanks with a story, and your body reacts as if it were fact. That's what old psychological programming does. We carry wounds from our past, rejections, criticisms, childhood beliefs, and we project them onto the present. It's like wearing cracked glasses. Everything you see is distorted. A neutral comment suddenly sounds like an insult. A silence feels like abandonment. A delay in someone's reply becomes a personal attack. And here's the kicker. You're not reacting to what is, you're reacting to what you fear. To the unresolved, unexamined narratives that have been quietly shaping your emotional world for years. So the real question is this. How much of your daily stress, anxiety, or insecurity isn't even based on truth? How many times are you getting triggered by things that were never meant to hurt you in the first place? The moment you start questioning your automatic reactions, everything begins to change. You stop living as a puppet pulled by every glance, every tone, every unanswered text. You start becoming the master of your mind, and that's where freedom begins. Because here's a hard truth no one teaches us growing up. You don't have to believe every thought that enters your mind. You can observe it, challenge it, and let it go. And that's what we're about to dive deeper into. Part 2, the truth about emotions and the power of inner control. Here's a truth most people never get taught, one that can completely shift how you experience life. There's a space. A small, invisible gap between what happens to you, and how you choose to respond. And within that space, that's where your true power lies. When someone says something rude. When life throws you off course. When your expectations aren't met. You don't have to react on impulse. You don't have to match the chaos around you. You can pause. You can breathe. You can choose your response. Sounds simple, right? But in reality, that pause, that moment of presence, is one of the hardest things to master. And yet, it's the foundation of emotional intelligence. Aristotle once said, "Anyone can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not easy." And that's the point. Real emotional strength isn't about not feeling. It's about knowing what you're feeling, and why. Let's be honest. Most of us are walking around with emotional reflexes, not emotional awareness. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you snap. Your partner forgets to text back, you spiral. Your boss criticizes you, you shut down or get defensive. But here's the question we rarely ask in those moments. Where is this emotion really coming from? Is it about them, or is it triggering something in you? A memory. A fear. A past wound you haven't healed yet. Sometimes, what feels like a 10 out of 10 reaction, is actually about something that happened 10 years ago. This is where Stoicism meets self-awareness. The Stoics didn't deny emotion. They studied it. Questioned it. Learned to sit with it without being ruled by it. Imagine this. Instead of reacting in a split second, you pause and ask. Is this emotion rooted in reality, or in my interpretation of it? Is this pain true, or is it a story I've told myself so many times it just feels true? That one pause can change the entire trajectory of your day. Instead of sending the angry text, you take a walk. Instead of lashing out, you reflect. Instead of spiraling, you stay grounded. And over time, those small pauses build a new kind of inner strength, quiet, calm, and unshakable. Let's not pretend this is easy. We live in a world that rewards reactivity. That pushes you to respond now, to be dramatic, to prove your point. But the strongest people I know, they're not the loudest. They're the ones who've trained themselves to stay composed when the world is trying to pull them apart. And this strength doesn't come from perfection, it comes from practice. From catching yourself mid-reaction and choosing differently. From slowly building that muscle between stimulus and response. That's not just emotional maturity, it's freedom. Freedom from being triggered by everything. Freedom from living like your emotions are your enemies. Freedom to feel without losing control. So the next time something stirs your emotions, try this. Don't ask, why is this happening to me? Ask, what inside me is letting this affect me? Because that's where the work begins. And that's where your power is reclaimed. Part 3, the world wants you to react, because it profits from it. Here's something most people never realize. The world is built to trigger you. Seriously. Look around. Social media. Advertising. News headlines. Almost everything you interact with on a daily basis is engineered, not to inform you, not to help you grow, but to provoke a reaction. And the more emotional that reaction is, the better it works. Why? Because a reactive mind is a profitable mind. Let's take advertising. You rarely see a commercial that says, "You're already enough." Instead, it whispers. "You're behind. You're aging. Everyone else has more." You need this product to finally feel confident. And without realizing it, you begin to internalize a lie. That your worth is something to be earned, or worse, purchased. That's not just marketing. That's psychological manipulation. Now let's talk about social media. Have you ever noticed how calm, thoughtful content rarely goes viral? It's outrage that spreads. It's the drama, the conflict, the comparison traps. Algorithms aren't designed to show you what's good for your soul, they show you what keeps you scrolling. And what keeps you scrolling? Doubt. Insecurity. Emotional agitation. Think about it. You're more likely to click on a post that makes you feel outraged, envious, or anxious than one that brings peace. That's not an accident. That's by design. And here's where it gets deeper. When you're constantly reacting, when your buttons are always being pushed, you become predictable. And in the modern world, predictable means controllable. The more triggered you are, the more data you provide. The more data you provide, the easier it is for companies and platforms to feed you what keeps you engaged. Not what makes you wise. Not what helps you grow. What keeps you hooked. In short, your emotional reactivity isn't just a personal struggle, it's part of a business model. One that's been systemically built around your psychology. The louder you shout, the more attention you give, the more money someone else makes. And that's not just frustrating. It's dangerous. Because while you're caught in a cycle of reacting, while you're defending yourself online, comparing your life to strangers, or feeling not good enough after a 30-second ad, you're not living. You're not thinking deeply. You're not in control. Here's the shift. You can't unplug from society, but you can unplug your triggers. You can train yourself to see the manipulation for what it is. You can learn to pause instead of react. To scroll with awareness. To consume with intention. To feel your feelings without letting them drive every decision. The moment you reclaim that space, the space between stimulus and response, you stop being a pawn in someone else's game. You become a player in your own. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic emperor who lived nearly 2,000 years ago, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. It's still true. Especially now. Because in a world that profits from your chaos, your calm is a quiet revolution. Your clarity. It's a rebellion. And your self-control. That's how you take your power back. Part 4, Relationships and the Emotional Trap. Let's get real for a moment. Some of the people closest to you, friends, family, even romantic partners, can become the most powerful triggers in your life. Not because they're evil. Not always because they mean harm. But because they've learned, consciously or not, how to push your buttons. And if you're not aware of it, if you don't have control over your reactions, you end up living like a puppet, your emotional strings pulled every time someone hits the right nerve. Think of it like this. Imagine there's a giant control panel strapped to your chest. On that panel are big red buttons labeled insecurity, jealousy, anger, fear, guilt. Now picture the people around you. Some of them know exactly which button to press, and when. One passive-aggressive comment. Boom. Jealousy. One silent treatment. Boom. Insecurity. One offhand remark about your past. Boom. Shame. Before you even realize it, you're reacting, snapping, defending, overthinking, shutting down. That's not connection. That's emotional manipulation. And again, sometimes, it's not even intentional. It's just what people do when they realize your peace is easy to disturb. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The more reactive you are, the easier you are to control. And this doesn't just happen in toxic relationships. It happens in everyday moments, with people you love. Not because they hate you, but because human beings are wired to influence one another. The problem is, if you've never taken back your emotional remote, anyone can grab it and flip the channel whenever they want. But here's the shift. What if you could unplug that control panel? What if someone tried to shame you, and you didn't bite? What if someone played the silent game, and you didn't chase? What if someone lashed out, and instead of matching their chaos, you chose calm? That's not weakness. That's not indifference. That's power. Socrates once said, "He who is not a good servant will not be a good master." Meaning, if you can't master your emotions, you'll always serve someone else's. Taking back control isn't about becoming emotionally cold. It's about recognizing when your buttons are being pushed, and refusing to hand over your peace like it's public property. It's the art of emotional leadership. Because once you start leading yourself, everything changes. You stop dancing to other people's drama. You stop reacting to things designed to provoke. And you start responding from a place of clarity and strength. So ask yourself this. Who in your life knows exactly how to trigger you? And more importantly, what would happen if their button stopped working? Imagine the freedom in that. Imagine showing up in your relationships not as a puppet, but as a grounded, whole person, clear, calm, and untouchable. You can love people without letting them control you. You can listen without absorbing. You can care deeply, and still protect your center. That's what emotional maturity looks like. And it begins the moment you say, "I don't need to react to stay connected. I need to stay rooted to stay free." Part 5, The Power of Silence and Emotional Detachment. There's a kind of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It doesn't defend. It simply pauses. And in that pause, there's power. Most people think silence is weakness. That if you don't clap back, if you don't respond immediately, you're avoiding conflict, or worse, losing. But the truth is, silence, when chosen consciously, is one of the strongest responses you can give. Let's be clear. This isn't about shutting down. It's about rising above. It's about refusing to hand out your energy to people, situations, or drama that don't deserve it. When someone insults you, and you don't flinch, that's power. When someone provokes you, and you respond with calm instead of chaos, that's emotional mastery. See, drama feeds on your attention. It survives on your reaction. The moment you stop reacting, you cut off its oxygen supply. And what happens to a fire when you stop fueling it? It dies. This is what the Stoics knew long before modern psychology gave it a name. They didn't teach people to suppress emotions, they taught people to own them. To understand them. To master them so that emotions serve you, not sabotage you. That's why silence, when used intentionally, is not escape, it's elevation. It's the choice to protect your peace without needing to prove your point. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Read that again. You have the power to revoke the pain. How? By not feeding it. By choosing stillness over reaction. By understanding that your peace isn't found in controlling what others say or do, it's found in how you respond. So next time you feel the urge to fire back, to explain yourself, to prove something, pause. Take one breath. And ask yourself, do I really want to spend energy on this? Or is this just noise trying to invade my inner world? Because when you stop reacting to everything, you create space. And in that space, clarity shows up. Strength shows up. Peace returns. Now let's talk about detachment, another concept people misunderstand. Detachment isn't about not caring. It's about caring right. It's knowing that just because something happens doesn't mean it deserves to enter your nervous system. Just because someone is loud doesn't mean they're right. And just because the world is chaotic doesn't mean you have to be. Imagine yourself like a tall tree in a storm. The wind howls. The branches sway. But the roots? Unmoved. That's what true detachment looks like. Stoicism teaches us that tranquility, not numbness, is the goal. It's not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming so grounded in your values, so clear on your worth, so in tune with your inner calm, that the world can spin, and you remain still. That's not passivity. That's presence. And in a world that profits from your reactivity, your silence, your discipline, your emotional detachment, that is your rebellion. Part 6, Rewriting Your Reflexes, How to Reprogram Your Emotional Code. Have you ever noticed how automatic your emotional responses can be? You get stressed, boom, your heart races, your mind spins. You get criticized, immediately, you feel defensive, angry, or ashamed. It's like your brain runs an old script, and you don't even realize you're reading the same lines every time. That's because it is a script. A mental pattern, written not by your conscious mind, but by years of conditioning, past experiences, and emotional survival strategies. And unless you interrupt it, you'll keep living in reruns. Same triggers. Same reactions. Same outcomes. But here's the breakthrough. You don't have to keep following that script. You can rewrite it. Let me explain. Your brain is plastic, meaning it's constantly rewiring itself based on what you repeat. If your reflex is to panic every time something feels uncertain, your brain says, "Great. Let's make this our default response." And it stores that reaction like a shortcut. But if you catch yourself in that moment, right when the reaction starts to build, and instead of spiraling, you pause, breathe, and choose a different response, you've just started a new script. And if you do that again tomorrow, and again the next day, your nervous system begins to learn. We don't do panic anymore. We don't fire back at every insult. We stay calm. We stay grounded. We stay present. That's neuroplasticity in action. That's emotional reprogramming. That's self-mastery, one choice at a time. Now, let's be honest, it's not easy at first. Because the old script is seductive. It feels familiar. It gives you a false sense of control. But all it really does is keep you locked in reaction mode. Imagine every emotional trigger is like a fork in the road. You can follow the old path. Explode, collapse, defend, or you can choose the new one. Pause. Reflect. Respond with clarity. Each time you take that new path, you're carving a trail through your brain. A new road where peace is the default, not panic. Where presence replaces autopilot. Where you don't lose yourself every time life gets loud. Here's a question worth asking. What if calm became your instinct? What if when things go wrong, your first response was stillness, not chaos? It's possible. But only if you practice. And you don't have to wait until the next big emotional meltdown to start. You can practice right now. In traffic. When someone interrupts you. When your phone buzzes with a passive-aggressive message. That's the moment. That's the test. That's your training ground. And here's the beauty. Every time you resist the urge to react. Every time you breathe instead of brake. You're not just calming the moment. You're reprogramming your entire emotional system. That's real transformation. Not just knowing the Stoic philosophy, but becoming it. Not just quoting Marcus Aurelius, but living his wisdom in the space between stimulus and response. Because the goal isn't perfection. It's presence. And when your nervous system learns that peace is safe, that stillness is power, that calm is your default, you don't just survive life. You start to master it. Becoming unshakable, the quiet power you build within. Becoming unshakable isn't about waking up one day and suddenly having it all figured out. It's not about some dramatic enlightenment moment, or deleting all your social media, or retreating from the world. It's about something far more subtle, and far more powerful. It's about awareness. Awareness of how often you've been living in reaction mode. Awareness of how many times you've let other people, or circumstances, dictate the rhythm of your inner life. Awareness of the tiny moments where you gave your power away, without even noticing. The Stoics knew that real transformation happens not when the world changes, but when you do. And that shift begins the moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" And instead ask, "What part of me is letting this affect me?" That single change in perspective is the beginning of your freedom. You start to notice that so much of your pain, your anger, anxiety, fear, didn't actually come from the event itself. It came from how your mind interpreted the event.